Hi, and welcome to Raspberry Pi Touch tutorial. Um, First thing we're going to do is we want to turn on this LED I have on my board here. So we're just going to click on the very top of our screen up here, and this activates my toolbar. I'm going to click on this little Raspberry Pi this little Raspberry up in the top corner. I'm going to go down to Universal Access. I'm going to click that once, and I'm going to click on Florence Virtual Keyboard. And this is going to give us the virtual keyboard that we can use when we want to type stuff in. So if you tap on this little 4 arrow thing here, it'll move your keyboard around. And if you want to minimize the keyboard and get it out of the way, you just tap this little down arrow on the top. You can also move the icon for the keyboard around, but I'm just going to leave it up in the top corner there. Next thing we're going to do is we want to open this SunFounder Dragit program. So we're just going to double click that. Just take a second to load up. And it's very much like Scratch. It's based off a program called Snap. And it's going to allow us to drag and drop stuff on the touch screen and do some physical computing with our breadboard that runs out from our Raspberry Pi here. So the first thing you'll notice is actually we're missing some components in the top corner up here. To get those in the screen, tap this little double arrow right here. And then tap that double arrow again, and now you can see I have a stop, a pause, and a flag, which you might recognize from Scratch. Now, second thing, this stage area here where we can do our animations is really big. We're not going to use that right now. So these little 2 lines up in the left corners, grab them and drag them over to the side to make the stage much smaller. We won't be using it for this video. Now we have our stage. We have our sprite corral. That's called a sprite corral right there. We have our scripting area where we drag our blocks into. And then finally we have this is called the palette. So scripting area, palette, sprite corral, and stage. And that's called, actually this part across the top here is called the toolbar. So there's a couple different names I'm going to be using here. So in the palette area, I'm going to go over to this part. You see this Raspberry Pi right there. I'm going to click on that module. I'm sorry, I'm holding the camera and trying to do this at the same time, so try my best. So if I click on Raspberry Pi, you can see now in the palette there's a lot of different options I can do. I want to access the general purpose input output pins, so I'm going to grab this little tiny block right here. I'm going to bring it in, and if you look at my board, and if you've looked at the top of the video, I am actually on GPIO pin 21. That's the one I want to run the current through. So I'm going to have to, right now this is on 17, so if it was 17, 17 is way over here, so I don't want to be using that pin, I want to be using 21. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on that little black arrow next to 17. That will bring up a whole bunch of different options on numbers I could use, and I'm going to click on the 21. Oops, see, sometimes I get it wrong, so I have to double click it. It just takes a little getting used to. So now I want to turn that on. So low is 0 volts, and I want to set that to high. So I'm going to click that little low thing there. I'm going to click on high. Now that's set it to 3.3 volts. And so if I tap that and see if I can do this kind of sideways here, so you can see it happen at the same time. If I tap that, that turns on my LED. So that runs 3.3 volts into the LED. And you can notice I also have my resistor here on the side running into my negative or my ground. You can see that negative little sign along the blue right there. Yeah, so there we go. We've turned on an LED. That's pretty cool. But what happens if we want to turn it off? Well, best way to do that is I could drag another one out here. But another cool function is you can 2-finger tap stuff. So if I 2-finger tap that once, you can see it brings up some more options, and I want to run the duplicate option here. So I want to duplicate that. So I'm just going to tap duplicate, and you can see it recreates that block, duplicates it. And instead of high, I want to turn it to low. So I'm going to tap it once, and I'm going to tap low. And now I'm just going to see if I can do this again from the side so you can see it. If I tap low, it turns the LED off. So turns it on high, and then turns it off on low. Okay, so that's our first video introduction.